As was mentioned, I'm David James. I'm Chief Learning Officer at 360 Learning. I'm also the host of the Learning and Development podcast and was also Director of Learning Talent and Organisational Development for the Walt Disney Company. Many of my colleagues worked in Paris too. Now, what I want to be speaking with you about today lends itself to what Jane was just discussing there as well, about measuring what matters and what matters more than people's ability to do the job or their potential ability to do their next job. And so what we're going to be talking about is some of those biggest priorities that are impacting L&D today, what it means for performance-orientated L&D over learning orientation, and I suppose the most important part, which is, well, how do you do this? So the biggest priorities, where we two have been discussing this 18 months ago or so, perhaps some of these wouldn't be on here, or some of them wouldn't be so prominent. I think you can't go anywhere these days without some conversation about skills. You certainly can't go through exhibition halls at learning conferences without mentions of skills. What I love about this is that it's actually the language of business. Our business leaders are talking about the skills shortages and our needing our abilities to plug our skills gaps internally, because this is some of the biggest priorities for them. And of course, there's AI disruption. Again, I'll refer you to the exhibition hall. It's not just disrupting learning and development. Of course, it's disrupting many jobs, as many as 1.4 billion jobs, according to McKinsey. And then we've got doing better with less, which perhaps isn't such a priority in France, because I do understand with my French team at Disney that the budgeting was done, or certainly financing it was done differently elsewhere. But any of you who have colleagues in other countries will certainly be expected to do better with less. And then we've got the bottom parts as well, which I think is really crucial. If the top part is what we've got to be talking about now, the bottom part's was important for us when I entered learning and development in the late 1990s, and was so before. But we haven't yet cracked equipping managers and leaders, or digital capability, or perhaps core skills development. And one of the big reasons behind this, again building on what Jane was just talking about, is perhaps the biggest priority there is for learning and development, is that our ability to make a planned and demonstrable impact. So every euro in equates to how many euros out? Or are we just a cost centre? Now, that's been wrangled with for longer than I've been in learning and development. We used to ask the question, is there a return on investment? We now ask, is there impact? But perhaps we're asking the right questions at the wrong times. But before we go into that, let's address some of the reasons why we don't address impact. Because I've heard all of these before. We don't have the learning culture yet, or we don't have C-suite buy-in. The line managers don't do enough learning and development, or the learning isn't transferred back to the workplace, or learners aren't self-directed enough. So these are all reasons why some people will suggest there isn't the impact, but I'm saying to you that there is no reason why we're not showing impact, except we in learning and development perhaps aren't ready yet. Because this is already happening, and it happens without permission, and it happens without the right text, and it happens without the learning culture, or the C-suite buy-in, or the line managers picking up more of the development. But what are we talking about here? Because surely all learning and development is created to affect performance. But what I'm saying is some of it is created to affect performance more in hope than anything else. When we're doing it in hope rather than anything else, we are providing learning. And we know this language. We either deliver learning or we provide learning. We have large libraries full of content in our LMS or our LXP. We have a comprehensive curriculum which is face-to-face. We service the business and we respond to the needs of the people that come to our classes and ask for our training. But whether we're making an impact or not, that will always remain a mystery. On the other hand, you have performance-oriented learning and development. And this starts with asking those uncomfortable questions rather than what training would you like, who would like to come, and when do you want it. It's pushing stakeholders on what is the purpose. What is it that we're looking to achieve with this? I mentioned to you before, I've run learning and development departments at a regional level. So I know what it means to ask a stakeholder, we've received back from the stakeholder, oh, we just haven't done anything for a while. Okay, so, but what are we looking to achieve with that? And then we might have to burst through a level of consistency. We need a consistent experience, which again is another reason not to think about what we want as an outcome. But being a credible and performance-oriented learning and development professional, we get past that to what is it that we expect people to do differently and achieve differently as a result of our intervention. And it's more cohort-based rather than one size fits all. I've also been in those meetings where a senior stakeholder who received a certain type of email that they weren't happy with told me that my team needed to deliver email training for the whole company. Again, it's pushing through to get through to what the needs that are really needed. When it's performance-oriented as well, we can integrate it into the work because we know how it should impact the work and we know when it should impact the work. And then finally, we know what impact it makes because it's data-driven at the outset. We've been really clear about the need or the aim of the intervention at the outset. So providing learning, we all know what this looks like. And what I will say at this stage is, I'm not saying don't do this, but you'll have to admit that you will never measure the impact of doing this beyond people turning up, people liking it, people not liking it, or people saying people will recommend it to their friends. Because doing a needs analysis, having those needs aggregated to a common level of abstraction, to design standardized learning solutions to be delivered en masse cannot affect performance. What they do is they scratch the learning itch, the one that's required, the one that will stop people coming to you every day and say, have you got something on time management? Have you got something on leadership? Have you got something on communication? We need to keep that wolf from the door. And so your generic content and some of your courses will address that. But when someone says to you, we need to increase digital awareness and digital capability in one of the functions in our team because they need to do the same job differently in order to achieve different ends, or the same job completely transformatively to completely change the way they do the work. I'll give you an example. When I was at Disney, we were asked whether we could digitally upskill the entirety of the Italian publishing team because there was a low proliferation of digital capability. The average tenure of that team was 11 years. So you either have to sack everyone and bring them in, a new lot in, but of course this is Disney, that was never going to happen, or you need to actually upskill. So how do we measure the success? They could actually do the job. And a little bit of a spoiler, we didn't run any classes and the e-learning didn't help us. We had to analyze what people were doing to understand what they were, see what they needed to do, understand where they were now, and create the shortest distance between now and the future so that they could actually do the job. That's an example of performance-oriented L&D where you actually discuss the outcomes. What is it that you expect people to do? We seek to validate this with the people themselves to understand the needs. And the good news is that if you've got a stakeholder who insists on training, this bit actually looks like training as well, where you've run discovery sessions with the people responsible for the work to understand what it is from their perspective and understand from them the gap so that you can make big bets, not on content and curricula, but on solutions that are designed to be laser focused to affect the work itself. We experiment to see whether we can make meaningful impact rather than sheep dipping people through or making big bets on LMSs as well as vast libraries full of content. And then finally, instead of implementing the tech that was the solution to an undefined problem, if you understand the problem, it is a problem, you understand it from the perspective of the people who do the work, you can scale your solutions with tech and that answers a lot of your problems, mainly around engagement, because people don't use what they don't see value in. But more importantly, when you're not fighting the resistance of people, you can actually get to affecting the work itself. But it's never been easier. I've been talking about this stuff for 10 years, and there have been people like Guy Wallace, Bob Mosier, many people I'm speaking here have been talking about this for a lot longer as well. But it has never been easier to do this. Performance orientation, over here, let me just say, this bit looks easy, right? I was running learning and development departments for 15 years. Congratulations if you've been doing this for longer. And if you've been doing it less time than me, I'll give you a tip. Buying solutions looking for problems and expecting people to engage in it is the hardest way to do L&D. Trying to drive people towards platforms that they're already ignoring or they don't want to use is a clue. They don't see the value. And so having that part of your job, in addition, is really hard. This bit sounds hard, and it's harder to do, but it's easier to get the credit. So on the podcast, I was talking to a guy called Sebastian Tyndall at Vitality, based in the UK. And he's pivoted from doing this and running 14 or completing 14 or 15 learning and development projects a year to over here, and he does 200. And it's 200 because he starts from a place of knowing, and then he's directly laser focused on solving those problems. So he could do 200 and know that he's actually achieved that. Over here, you spend, what was Jane talking about? Millions of euros, and never know whether you're making an impact. But here's how AI can really help you. And if it's not helping you right now, then look at the ride we went on in 2023. Who would have thought at the beginning of 2023 we're having the conversations we were? What I think 2024 is the year of actual reaping the benefits of AI. Because AI can help to collate the data for us and even help us to make sense of this. There's a guy called Ross Stevenson on LinkedIn, and he's pretty much using ChatGPT for the benefit of L&D. And so he did a survey of the usage of AI in learning and development. He took the raw data, fed it into ChatGPT, and asked AI to review that and come up with the core themes for him. So it did the work. But you can do this now on an enterprise level with people data and business data. And if you can't do now, you just need to push your vendors a little bit harder to get you the access. But skills mapping is possible now. So these next two, I think, are absolutely crucial to both us understanding where our value is, but also in enabling a really empowering, self-directed learner. So skills mapping means that we have access to not just internal data, which benchmarks people at certain levels, and also then provides them with a map of adjacent roles in the company. They can do this externally. So if you're not motivated by how to get on at your company, you are going to be motivated by how to develop the skills so that you're more marketable outside your company. And again, that's available now with tools that are in this, certainly in this exhibition hall. So we're talking about the usage of data, understanding from an employee perspective where they are, where they need to be, the skills mapping, but also the assessments can be done at scale so that you can create content which isn't based on just generic skills that are being sold on the basis that they are universal and they apply everywhere. Now, anyone who's worked in more than one organization knows that that's not true anyway. But you can turn internal proprietary knowledge and know-how into courses and resources in just a few minutes, whereas in the past, that would have been an entire department's job. And of course, then if you can automate this and integrate it into the tools that people use for work, you can be there. I'm going to nick someone else's words here, but I'll reference Bob Mosier and Conrad Gottfredson in the 5 moments of need, to be there at the moment of need, to influence the moment of apply, so that we haven't just got the information that people need to do the job, but we can actually apply that to where they're working and where they actually need that. And performance-oriented L&D doesn't mean that we muscle our way in to try to find out what the biggest business problems are in our organisations. It means looking at the stuff that's already at our door to see how we do this in a more performance-orientated way. Now, I say the worst type of induction is you need to know this. You need to know the vision and mission. You need to know what these departments do. You need to know the strategic goals. On someone's first day, they can't even remember the person sitting next to them's name. So to give them an hour's worth of you need to know doesn't work. But an induction based on this is the stuff that you need to know in order to do what you need in the company, based on what the data that recent new starters have actually said was useful. Now, that's a different way. And if you're then basing the success of that, going back to what Jane was saying before, on the reason your induction exists, which is to prepare people for work, to help them to understand the culture of your organization, so to address churn issues, so to make sure that people stay beyond 6 months and 12 months, all the reasons that you're actually doing this can be addressed. Same with core skills development, but also, which I think is really important as well, we're talking about skills, the potential to create deeper, richer talent pools inside your organization is also a problem that many people are solving, and is performance oriented. So to wrap up, collaborative learning is your key to this as well. We've talked about the traditional method before, which is the skills analysis aggregated up to a top level, creating standardized solutions. And the only thing that you can really guarantee is that people turn up to classes and say, I don't know why I'm here, because they don't recognize the performance issue that brought them to that in the first place, because that's not included in the end solution, and certainly not from a digital solution perspective. A more collaborative approach, again, powered by AI and the analysis up front, means that you can be impact-driven. That means understanding what it is that people are expected to do, that they're not able to do easily or effectively, and that is your measure of success. So you start with knowing, you iterate in order to make some kind of improvement rather than launch something onto people and expect them to engage in the hope that there'll be benefit for them. You can do this quickly. You can do this with the internal proprietary information of your organization, which doesn't always mean engaging subject matter experts from the off, but certainly means understanding from documentation that you already have that creating the stuff that people need when they need it, and then making sure that you then got the opportunity to scale this based on, though, solving smaller problems at a time. So, as I wrap up, you create your performance-oriented L&D strategy by doing this way. You solve real problems. You don't solve learning and development problems. Learning and development problems are, we don't have this content, we don't have this system, and we don't have these classes. These are the people's ability to do the job that they're in now and that they want to do in the future. We use data and evidence. Again, this has never been easier with AI tools. And then we measure ourselves and our ability on this because people are upskilled because they are now being considered for internal jobs, whereas perhaps they wouldn't have before. Their ability to do the job, to be prepared to do the job and then actually deliver the job is a key skill here. Remember, AI is your co-pilot, not your captain, for anybody who needs reminding that it might not be as accurate as you need it to be, but my goodness, what is Donald Clark always says, today's as bad as it's ever going to be, and it's still smarter than most of the people, I'd say the aggregate of everybody in this room. I'll come back to the Q&A in a sec, but I would like to, have we got any more? No? I'll go back to the Q&A. Does anybody have any questions about this before I invite our next speaker up? No? If you'd like to see any of this in action, please come and see me. I'll be at booth 030, the 360 Learning booth. We've got drinks at 5 o'clock, so perhaps there's a good reason to come as well. But please come over and join us. I'd love to carry on the conversation with you there. Thank you very much.